Hey guys, how's it going? Danny Fitzy here, and today I'm going to be showing you a really cheap version of the Meta Fire Blade Vortex build that a lot of people have been running this league. There's two reasons for this. One, just to show that you don't need Badge of the Brotherhood, Void Batteries, Watcher's Conversion, Watcher's Eye, what else? Headhunter. You don't need any of that to see what you're about to see on the screen, which is the desired effect of being able to explode screen full of mobs at a time. Now, there's a cheap way you can get around a lot of these problems, and as you can see here in the background, you can see these beautiful explosions going off. That's Herald of Ash Celestial effect that you're seeing, and this is just a standard T16 grotto with 4 sextant mods with extra mobs, because the more mobs, the more chain you're going to get on your explosions. And I think some fragments for Quant and an Alva, obviously. Other than that, there's not too much going on. The only thing you won't be able to do with a really cheap version of this build is probably 100% Deliriums, because you're not going to have the defense. That's where Headhunter becomes the best item in the game. You just become invincible. And you can probably do like 60%, maybe 80%. But there's no defense on this character at the moment. And I just want to show off basically how easy it is to get a character like this rolling. Because I think there's a lot of misconception when people see this build that it has to be done with a Headhunter and a Badge of the Brotherhood, and those two items alone cost more than I've ever probably farmed in one league, to be honest, at the current cost, which is unfortunate because Badge of the Brotherhood used to be a lot cheaper and obtainable, but it's so strong that it has become a chase unique at this point, and especially when it's part of a meta build like this that all the big boys are using, like aura stackers and stuff, everything just becomes mega expensive. So I just want to talk about, if you already know how the Blade Vortex build functions and why it's so strong, then I'd probably skip forward to if you just want to see the gear that I'm running and maybe the setup to achieve this without needing, Void Batteries and a Watcher's Eye and all that. But the reason why this build is so strong and functions the way it does is because the combination of all the same modifiers you need to scale Blade Vortex scale the Explody chest. And what that means is, obviously, it's a Fizz Explosion that does 3% damage of the mob's life. It's an area skill. I don't know if it has base crit, but with Assassin, you get base crit as your ascendancy, so you're giving the base crit anyway, regardless of if it starts with any. I think it's like a Herald, to be honest, in terms of that. So you're scaling area of effect, area damage. You're converting all your physical to fire. You're getting physical as extra fire, which works with Explody as well. Same for Blade Vortex. And then you're scaling crit and crit multi. So all of those come together to just make Exploding Chest. The base damage of it's already doing 3% of a max life, right? So it's already hitting pretty hard. So when you scale that even further, it's doing, I don't know the calculation. I would say it's probably doing closer to like 10%, 20% of a mob's life with all the extra damage modifiers if you were to calculate it in that way. And that's why it's just so strong. Just everything in this build that scales Blade Vortex is going to scale your Exploded Chest. The only thing that won't is spell damage. So, and anything that's obviously socketed into the Blade Vortex, which is I think is an obvious thing, but I'll state that. And there's a single target there. You have to be careful though. I almost died. It's a very squishy build. You're full glass cannon. You are dependent on killing stuff before it kills you. There's no doubt about that. In the current setup. But like I said, the only thing I've spent money on this build is probably the chest. The Exploded Chest is the only thing you need, right? And an Exploded Chest is about 7-8x at the moment for a half decent one, I'd say, with like some useful other stat on it. I'm using a double influence one with Frenzy Charge generation on it, but the 12%, because I've only got 3 frenzies anyway, the 12% more damage I'm getting from that, you wouldn't notice the difference if you went into the same map. So there's a map for you with a boss. I wouldn't recommend this for killing Conquerors because it's not a Conqueror build. It will do a decent amount of damage just because of the functionality of Blade Vortex and the raw damage it has by default. And I'm going to do this cell because it's 40C and I'm still talking. But yeah. So the way we get around having to use Void Batteries and conversion with a Watcher's Eye is you go Quiver and Bow. And the reason why you go Quiver and Bow is because the Signal Fire. Let me just do this. I'm a dirty boy. You shouldn't do this in a video. It's dirty. Alright, no more. So we're getting around this by using a signal fire. And the reason the signal fire is so good is because it gives you the full convert. It gives you 50%. So that means you only then need Avatar of Fire. You have full conversion. Like I said, that's Explody as well. And it gives you Fizz's Extra. And Fizz's Extra is a massive, basically a more multiplier in this build. Because it works for both the Explody and the Blade Vortex. So this is 30% of the physical, base of the Explody and the Blade Vortex as extra fire damage. It can go up to 35 on this quiver. This was 15C. This is required for this setup. The other two, obviously the Explody chest is required. Any Explody chest you get is going to do the job. If you can get life, if you can get a double influence one with another useful mod, that's going to be great. I'll go over each piece a little bit more detail, but I'm just going to go over the key pieces right here real quick for the TLDR, I suppose. And then you want Buff Effect Circle of Anguish wings, 2 of these. Obviously, if you get the double damage ones with the fire damage as well, that's when you're getting into like the 15, 16x per ring. But these cost me about 20C each, these rings, because the implicit as well is not really doing anything for me. And it's got fire res, and this has got max 1, whatever. You just need that buff effect, because the buff effect is taking your Herald of Ash damage, your Fizz's Extra, multiplying that as well. They're both separate multipliers. And it's also doing the fire damage, I think, but that's a Morse fire spell damage, doesn't really matter. And obviously the overkill on a Herald of Ash is not being affected by the rings, but is also another reason why the build cleans up so well, because you're hitting so hard when you do overkill something. Herald of Ash will do a significant amount of damage to a mob that's cleaved by it, which is another reason why I'm using increased air on it, just to buff it up a bit more. But obviously, because we're using a quiver in these 2 rings and the chest, we need a bow. Bows are actually really easy to get. I'm using a proper crappy one here. It's literally just essence spammed with a essence of woe, which is going to give you a guaranteed spell damage roll. See, this is the highest one you can get, 123 to 144% spell damage. Obviously, only going to affect your Blade Vortex, but obviously you want that to hit hard because you need some single target as well. Boost. And then obviously you're looking for multi, crit chance, obviously as long as it's not local crit chance, it has to be global. And then you can craft on double damage while focused if you want some more burst, because you'll get like up to like 40% double damage. I've just crafted on normal double damage, just so it's a bit smoother while mapping and doing bosses. And I don't know if that double damage applies to Explody. I don't actually know, but I know the multi will. But obviously you have to use a bow anyway, so you're kind of stuck into that because you're using the quiver. But you can also get amazing bows with like plus levels, and you could end up putting your Blade Vortex in there with like an Empower and get it extremely high level, so it does a lot of damage by default by scaling the base. So those are required. Obviously the bows, whatever, but I mean you have to use a bow. But the uniques that are required are the Signal Fire, about 15 to 20C quiver, and at least buff effect rings or increased fire damage rings. I would say the buff effect is probably stronger, but one or the other damage type. And then obviously, because I'm talking about low end, right? We're talking about low end here. I'm trying to get this build rolling on the lowest possible budget. You just want one or the other. And then in terms of the other gear that I'm actually using here is all trash that I've pulled off my other characters. Life Resist, big move speed roll, some attributes. Life Resists, it's an ES belt, it was off an ES character, so I rolled life on it. Gloves are useless, they just got an OK implicit because I pulled them out of like a 3C tab. This came off my Fire Wild Strike guy. It's pretty decent amulet. I think I bought it for like 1x at the time, and that was when 1x were like 30C. But it's got like multi, life, and obviously if you can get it, Fizz's Extra. And there's also like +1 of Dex gems you could get on a Hunter influence. And there's so this is what I'm rocking right now, and I guess you don't need a crit Cinder Swallow, but I do recommend a Cinder Swallow for mapping, because it just gives you instant health and life and all that as you're killing packs of mobs. So as long as you don't get one shot, you pretty much feel healing to full instantly. And then obviously we're using a diamond flask. This is a dead flask right here. I should probably put a wise oak here instead, because my fire res is like way over. So I would get 15% more penetration, so that's some nice single target there, and some unique mobs and stuff. Obviously a health flask, diamond flask because we're crit, move speed, want to go fast, and that is pretty much the gear. Now, there are many upgrades to be made. Let me just quickly tell you about some of them. So if you do want to spend some extra money to make the character even better, I'll go over the tree and the gem links in a second. I'm doing this video a little bit different than I normally do. I'm trying to show you like what's the bare minimum and then telling you about some possible upgrades. So for your helmet, +1 power charge, either a corruption or a warlord's influence will be your best in slot. You can also get minus like fire res nearby mobs or whatever that one is, the old fossil mod. I think it's on a shaper base now. I think it's elemental actually. I think it's an elemental thing. Whatever that one is that lowers reses around you is strong as well. And obviously any blade vortex enchant you can get is very strong. And if you want to use a unique helm and you're only mapping, I wouldn't recommend this build for a heist, by the way. It's a bit poo-poo. But you could maybe make some changes and make it stronger for heist. But personally, my current setup is awful. So this is really strong for mapping. It basically gives you mad increased shrine effect and time. It also gives you like little mini shrines that also buff you as well. So things like the move speed shrine, the defensive shrine that gives you max res, will literally make you unkillable while you have it up pretty much. It's really nice. I'd probably want to slap this on. You can get this with a +1 power or something. Insane. And then obviously getting it with an enchant. All the Blade Vortex enchants are quite expensive. And the biggest one, the best quality of life one being increased duration. It's probably going to cost an arm and a leg. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. With the bit we take on the tree down here, you actually have enough duration for it to feel smooth plus unleashed. So wouldn't worry about that. Obviously Badge of the Brotherhood if you want to go balls to the walls. But like I said, bare minimum. I would say anything that looks like this with life resist, attributes, multi. Fizz's Extra is a decent damage mod. The other damage mod, which I would say was probably a little bit better, is the +1 Dex gems. But that'll only scale your Blade Vortex, right? Whereas Fizz's Extra is an Explody mod, damage increase as well. So remember to keep that in mind. Yeah, like I said, rings are locked in, quiver's locked in, bow. If you get plus levels bow, would be stronger, but you can just slap a synthesis bow with, instead of cold here, you could have fire damage, and you could slap it with spell damage. Hope you get some multi and a spare suffix for some double damage. Easy way to craft the bow there. It's not going to cost barely anything. Gloves, I would say just try and get some with either a max frenzy or culling strike, or both if you could splash out. If you have frenzy generation on your chest, I would go max frenzy. If you don't, I would go culling strike. Or botting, and then there's probably some better uniques right in some of these slots that I'm not thinking about because there's so many in this game, but right now this is a free slot for me to do whatever with, basically. Same with the belt. Obviously you want life resist because you want to cap your resistances, but I would say Stygian Vise is going to be pretty strong here, so you can get an Abyss Jewel in there for some phasing, or yeah, probably phasing on kill. I've got mine in my up here at the moment, my phase, so the phasing on kill is going to be strong, and then you can obviously get more life, move speed, damage. It's entirely up to you. But there's probably another one. I mean, a headhunter, obviously best in slot, but that's what to aim for, I suppose, at the top end. Booties, I would say just big move speed, big life, any resistances you need, and attributes. Obviously, enchant them. For like fire damage if you've killed recently. Yeah, what's the one? The Ellie Pen if you haven't killed recently, because that's strong against bosses. So after 4 seconds you get like an extra 10 penetration. 10 seconds? Did I say 10? 4 seconds. And there's probably some other ones. Move speed if you haven't been hit recently. Things like that. Obviously I'm not even rocking an enchant at the moment. Another good choice, I think, that could be decent, I'm going to try them out at some point when I get an extra power charge, is these replicas, because they give you damage per power charge, and that's global, so it'll increase Explody damage. They give you a nice chunk of life. It'll be up to, well, when I have 8 friends, I have 7 at the moment, but I can easily get 8 powers, and that will give me 4% life, 40% move speed, and 40% increased damage from the boot slot, which is not bad. They have life on them as well. The only thing you don't have is resists. So, and also you won't have that much move speed when you've not got power charges up. But obviously while you're mapping, that's going to be even better than these. So they're decent. I'm sure there's some other boots around here that are good. Obviously, crafted tailwind boots would be another very strong setup. That'll probably be your best in slot for a rare. And yeah, there's not too much to talk about there. And then obviously your chest, like I said, if you can get a double influence one, you can get one with Frenzy. I recommend the Frenzy because Frenzy gives you more damage and it's global damage. Whereas if you get, say, like the +1 active skill gems, which is a Warlord's influence, I believe, it will scale your Blade Vortex up by another level, which is good. But that doesn't affect your Explody. So that will only increase, say, your single target. So if that's something you want, or you can get Frenzy somewhere else with like a Hubris Circlet or whatever they're called. Is it called a Hubris Circlet? I have one somewhere. Let me find it. Let me bloody find it. There it is. One of these, you can put one of these like down, maybe over here, clip some of these nodes, and you can get chance to gain Frenzy on hit on those. I have one on my other build, but not this build. Also, another thing for the belt slot is something like this could be strong. Increased fire damage on a Warlord's influence belt. I'll increase both Explody and your Blade Vortex. So that is it. Obviously, double damage anguishes will be best in slot, but they're going to be very expensive, so that's entirely up to you. Flasks, like I said, you're looking at Wise Oak, making sure your fire's capped the most, so you get the actual, the pen for your main damage source. Obviously, if you can triple balance, that's going to give you the reduced damage as well, which can be really nice. Cinder Swallow, I would say, is probably mandatory for mapping. It doesn't have to be the crit one, but if you've got like some extra money, I would recommend the crit one, so why not? But you are an assassin, so you have a high amount of crit anyway, so it is probably, some of it's probably not worth it, but especially with the Diamond Flask up. Move speed, and then your next best option would maybe be a Dying Sun for some more area. You can get up to 25%, I think, on a Dying Sun. Obviously, the +2 proj is pointless, but 25% area on a Flask with like 20% less fire damage taken as well. Quite nice. Plus that, if you had that in a Wise Oak, you'd be taking like no fire damage. So you'd be pretty immune to that damage type, which is not terrible. Gem links. For your main Blade Vortex, I'd recommend trying to get a Val Blade Vortex and then a 21 if possible. The quality is really not that. We're scaling so much area, and you'll see in a minute on the tree, that you don't actually need the 10% from the quality. You're not gonna see it on your Blade Vortex. The chances of that being like the 10% you need to hit like a +1 radius, because in this game it's like thresholds to hit a radius increase. You don't actually just get 10%. If your 10% doesn't bring it over a threshold for a +1 radius, then it won't do anything. So I don't know if I'm on that mark, so maybe 10% would give me one more radius. But obviously it's only on the Blade Vortex, it's not affecting Explody. I think it's plenty enough, and obviously a 21 with no qual Val Blade Vortex is very cheap. It's like 20c, I think, maybe even cheaper than that. Obviously getting one of the alternate quality ones will be best in slot, but they're going to be very expensive, so that's entirely up to you if you want to splash out there. But I would recommend a 21 Val, because the Val is going to give you some nice burst damage. It basically doubles your damage for about 4 or 5 seconds on a boss. And it also gives you range, so if you do have a bit of a dick mob off of the screen like shooting shit at you that's really hurting, you could just drop a Val Blade Vortex on their head and hope it kills them. It is really strong, so I recommend that. We've got this linked to Added Fire, which at my point in the build, Inspiration's a stronger damage link, so I will be swapping that out soon, but I'm just going to get this to 20, qual it up and Vile Orbit, so once you have enough damage, Inspiration does become better, because it's a more multiplier, where this is Fizzes Extra, and we have a lot of Fizzes Extra. But remember, this is Fizzes Extra only for Blade Vortex, because it's a support gem. This doesn't affect the Explody, I don't believe, so you can lose that without like going, oh shit, I'm losing all this Fizzes Extra on the Explody. I'm sure your Explody will be doing fine anyway, because it's so fucking strong. But yeah, then we're using Ellie Focus. Herald of Ash, sorry, I keep calling it Herald of Ash. I'm terrible. Doesn't need you to ignite stuff, so you don't need to inflict ailments. So the biggest damage gem in the game, I believe, is this gem here, Ellie Focus. 49% more damage, plus the quality, which is an increase, 10%. is a massive damage increase, so definitely recommend that gem. Unleash is a no-brainer. You can't play Blade Vortex without it. You want to blow your brains out. It basically means when you're at full Unleash stacks, when you press it once, you get 4 charges instead of 1, because it does the 1 cast plus the 3, so you get 4, and it's just easier to maintain. As you can see, you get like 1 or 2 charges back quite quick, so that means you're actually overcapping your blades, so the skill duration actually feels even better. So, because when you're already at 10 and you cast 3, you're 3 over 10, right? So those have to count down. So it always stays up quite easily in maps, as long as you're every few packs you just cast it. It doesn't even have to be at 10, to be honest. When you're around 8, you're still one-shot in packs. Intensify, because it just gives a massive area of effect, but it also allows you to stand still and get small area, but do more damage. So if there is a boss that you are able to just stand next to and clip, you're going to get like a chunk of damage while you stood still, but obviously it gives you the same amount of area as a normal area effect gem, so it makes no sense to use that over this unless you're using an awakened area of effect for a little bit more area. And then control destruction is the second biggest more multiplier gem you can get, and the reduced crit really doesn't affect an assassin so much because we have so much crit, so we blast through that no problem. And obviously getting these 21 if you can, but obviously only the active skill is the most important 21 gem to get, and the rest are slight upgrades. Then I'm using Arcane Surge, Second Wind, Dash, Withering Step. Withering Step will proc Arcane Surge for you, so you don't have to use Dash, but if you prefer to just dash everywhere rather than being a speedy boy with Withering Step, that's entirely up to you. I keep both just in case I need to traverse some terrain. But they do eat into each other, so if you're one of those people who likes to dash around all the time, don't do what I've done here and put Withering Step on your click, because you'll notice a lot of the time while you're running around in a map, you'll like press Withering Step like now, and you won't be able to dash sometimes, and it's kind of annoying, but I just keep it there for that. But they both proc Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge is only going to give you more spell damage, so that's only going to affect your Blade Vortex, but it's some nice burst anyway, and Withering Step is like pretty much perma up in a map, I'd say, so. And if you're not dashing, then, you know, I'd say Arcane Surge is up most of the time, so it's a nice damage increase. Then our auras are Anger, are 50%. I would say use Zealotry instead of Anger here, because we don't use a Watcher's Eye at the moment. There are some more powerful Watcher's Eyes other than the conversion ones, like Multi, Fizzes Extra, increased fire damage. So if you can get hold of one of those, then Anger will be better. But until you have a Watcher's Eye, I would probably use Zealotry instead of Anger. At this point, I might as well just level it to 20. It's still not a bad aura to have because it is flat damage to spells. But Zealotry is a more spell damage multiplier, so at this point in the build, it's going to give us a lot more damage, and it's crit as well, which is quite nice. I think it's global crit, so that will affect your Explody. And then our second, obviously we're using Herald of Ash. This plus the combination of the Circle of Anguish rings is pretty much the cornerstone of the build. But we're linking this up with a increased area, enhance, and enlighten. You know, this is going to reduce the mana reservation. This is going to give more quality, and it's about a ding to 3 as well. I leveled this one up myself, which means you're getting more increased fire damage while the buff is up. That's global as well, so that's just like having a node on the tree. So why not? You got a spare link. I mean, you could always put like Swift Affliction in here, I believe, and makes the overkill burn last longer and do more damage, but I don't think it's necessary at all. And then obviously increased area, so it's like a bit bigger. It cleaves as much as the Explody chest, and that way you'll get that overkill damage doing its job. You might even notice it happening sometimes when a mob gets cleaned up by it. And then we are using Hex Touch, Wave of Conviction, Combustion, Flammability on a boss or any tough mob that's not got one shot by the explosion. If you hit them with a Wave of Conviction with this setup, they essentially have like minus like 75 fire res or some shit, and this is not even like fully leveled yet, because you're getting 25 on the Wave of Conviction because we're Avatar of Fire. This is only doing fire damage, so it'll always proc the fire LE weakness. This is another minus 19 if you ignite them, which you should be doing because you should crit pretty much 100% of the time. And Flammability is just going to give you, when they're cursed. Obviously, if they're hexproof, they're not going to get cursed. But then this is going to give you another minus 36. Also gives you a big chance to ignite them. So if you hit them with 2 wave convictions, the chances of not getting a combustion proc is like just not going to happen, right? And even that's got 50% chance on it. So that thing will do some nice damage boost to your wave conviction, to your blade vortex. Sorry. So the burst damage, you basically just want to run in, hit them with wave of conviction, make sure you're at 10 blades, and then put your Vile blade vortex down, and try to make sure you're overlapping both your blade vortexes on the boss, and you'll probably zerg them down. Obviously, some bosses are just backhand you, and you'll get one shot. But obviously, if you can get some more defensive layers in the build, you'll be able to stand there a little bit more reliably and get that damage out. It does surprisingly amount of decent single target for maps. I wouldn't recommend it for like Conquerors and stuff because you might not have Vile blade vortex up, and it's just not a quality build for that. But that's what I'm rocking right now. I've also got Cast on Damage Taken a Mortal Coil and Cast on Death Portal. This is just a nice little, make sure you don't get 2-shot. Well, helps you from getting 2-shot every now and then. And then this is obviously, because we're a mapper, it's kind of annoying when you're running around with a glass cannon boy, you get randomly 1-shot by a beyond boss spawning in and dicking you. You don't have to do the Walk of Shame, so it's just easy to have that. I don't mind wasting 2 links for that. And then we're just leveling a Blade Vortex in our offhand here. So we still technically, if you don't want to use Cast on Death Portal here, you could go maybe a bigger Cast on Damage Taken setup. But that's entirely up to you. That's what I'm rocking right now. And as you can see, it's cleaning up T16 pretty well. The tree, I'm just trying to make this under 30 minutes if possible, because I don't want this to be too long. That's why I'm speaking like rapid speeds. You're taking basically every power charge you can get on the tree. We've anointed this one because we've decided not to go down to this side of the tree and take a cluster, which I'm hopefully eventually going to build out. And then we're also coming down here, grab this skill factoration. You will need it. This pretty much makes or breaks the build. Without this 45% here, it's actually does feel pretty bad even with Unleash. Once you get that, more than good enough. Obviously we're picking up any crit multi we can get. This is crit multi to spells, so this is only going to affect your Blade Vortex and not your Explody. This 3-noder here is very powerful, up to Arcane Expanse, so get that. That's a lot of area and spell damage. Obviously grabbing, any life that's connected to the travel nodes here. Got a little increased area damage, increased life jewel there. Grabbing Avatar of Fire, obviously we need that full conversion. Because otherwise you're going to lose a lot of damage if you don't have that. So definitely get full conversion. And once you have all your power charges, you can take the power charge like nodes here. This is going to give you huge multi and huge damage per power charge, which is really nice. And some increased crit. The fire damage, you can drop this once you have another cluster jewel set up. Because obviously stacking too much fire damage is additive at the end of the day, and it will eventually become almost pointless when you have too much of it. Like 20% fire damage when you already have like 200% is not 20%, right? If you know how additive and multiplicative work. But just trust me on that. If you already have like a shit ton of fire damage from like your rings, from other gear, from cluster jewels, taking like this up here, even this, I mean the pen helps this, but 25% is not 25% increased damage, okay? And I got some spare points here that I've just thrown in some extra bits. Like there's a point here that I probably wouldn't take, these 2 here. But I'm just waiting. I'm trying to craft my own clusters. And for clusters, you basically just want to use fire damage or fizz damage large. I'd use fire damage to be honest, because there's some nice fire damage ones like Smoke and Remains, very strong. The smoke clouds are quite good. They make mobs less likely to hit you. And there's some other good nodes here. You could even go Ellie damage and maybe get like the life leech stuff. The damage Ellie leech plus like the 10% chance to blind enemies as well would be a good defensive layer. And then for your mediums, you're looking at area damage with 4 or 5 sockets or 4 or 5 passive nodes, and you want to look for vast power plus anything else. Assert Dominance is pretty good for some mega AoE. If you want a bit more damage, you can get, I think it's called Magnifier or something along those lines, which is area of effect, area damage, and multi, and it's all like 10 of that each. But they're probably expensive to get them, so I just craft them honestly. Getting vast power and this assert dominance was not hard at all. And so you can imagine if you have this just one cluster filled out, you've got like 50 area. When you have all your powers up, you've got like 50 area effect from each node here. So that's like 100 area from 2 mediums. And then you can connect to small and get even more % life for a lot cheaper, because it's all like within, within like you don't have to travel to it, right? So I might drop some points here and there, and then just make up the difference in the cluster jewel while getting all that extra air effect. Very nice. So obviously you can see the tree, you can copy it. You know, if you have more decks, you can obviously drop this point. You know, even maybe drop these area nodes here by the time you start getting plenty of medium clusters going. Because like I said, once again, increased area is not more area. So the more area you have, the less like 10% is, right? So I would even drop some of this area, like these nodes here, you could probably drop for another medium cluster, would probably be worth it, because then you can also build into a small, and you save a lot of points and get a lot of life and survivability as well. In terms of upgrades here, like I said, Watcher's Eye is very strong. If you have some really nice jewels, I would take a couple more jewel sockets, maybe drop some points somewhere else, because you can get some like nice real high multi jewels with like percent life. And then a Thread of Hope here with a large ring, a very large ring, can clip the top of this and these two top power nodes. So that is extremely strong for saving like all these points here while still getting the main notables and this multi per power charge, because that's the strongest little notable here. So a large one in here, and I think it clips some other stuff, but I don't remember off the top of my head. It's also good down here because you can clip Divine Judgment and Divine Fury, but I've decided not to go down this side of the tree, but you can. And if you get skill effect duration somewhere else, maybe you could cut this whole bit off down here and go down this side. And then obviously we're in Assassin, so we're taking Mistwalker for the elusive. That's how we have super fast. Elusive gives a lot of move speed. Obviously we get power charges and a plus power charge, we get multi per power charge, and we get base crit while we're at maximum power charges. So this means even your exploded chest and heralds can crit, which is why Assassin's always so strong for auto bombing. And then we're taking opportunistic over ambush and assassinate, because we already have enough crit that we're probably guaranteeing crits on stuff anyway. But also the 20% move speed for mapping is insane. If you don't have I would say if you don't have that much crit, this could be better, because you're going to guarantee the explosions are critting, because it's 100% more against full life. So if a mob stood next to a mob when it explodes, it's going to get guaranteed explosion crit on it and do more damage. And you know that increases chain, right? So that's 100% on all the chains. You get culling as well, but this is 25% more damage against a single target where you actually need it the most. And move speed. But like I said, you want to be a speedy boy. The more move speed on this is a defensive layer, because you can actually move around and dodge stuff. When you're walking really slow and trying to go up to a mob to hit them with a blade, they're probably just going to hit you with a projectile. You're going to die. So I would definitely recommend that. But they're very close. If you get Culling Strike on your gloves, then definitely take opportunistic over the ambush and assassinate. But without Culling Strike already in your build, these are I'd say they're very well matched. One's just a case of, do you want some more move speed, or do you want some more guaranteed like chain explosions with Cull as well? But the Cull is basically the 25% more, 10% more plus the the crit. I don't know. It's very strong. So either or, you can't go wrong on those two there. And yeah, like I said, I wanna essentially mirror this side of the cluster on this side, and then maybe in the future go for another one. But I think even with what I've got right now, as you saw, I feel like I've got enough area, right? And I feel like it does enough damage. So I'm pretty happy. I'll probably go one more cluster so I can go into life as well. And that'll probably be me, right? And I'll be set. And then obviously it's a case of upgrading my gear, so I'm tankier. I guess the only other thing to mention is a timeless jewel. To hit like a keystone that gives you like the split damage over your ES and life. It's a very common thing to do on Assassin to get some like big damage reduction for very cheap, because it only costs a few points, but I'm not even going to bother doing that. So you can look that up if you want, but I believe it's a timeless jewel. It's the Val one, Vanity I think, and it turns one of the keystones into like a split of like, you take Ellie with your like 50% of Ellie as chaos damage, and you have to stack a bit of chaos resistance, but I'm not doing that. You don't have to do that. You can cream T16 maps with this terrible setup, as long as you have an Explody chest, 2 Circle of Anguish, a Signal Fire with a half decent bow. Doesn't even have to be half decent, but yeah, you're good to go. That's all you need, and some increased air effect. And that's really how the build comes together. So, yeah, I'm going to put a snapshot of the build, the current build here, POB down below, with all the crappy gear so you can see how bad it is, and you can bully me if you want. I'm going to probably upgrade this character over the next few days now anyway, so yeah, I guess you can search my name, Danny Fitzy, and then go to this character. He's called Dick Out, the opposite of Assassin. Assassin, Dick Out, okay, get the joke, haha. So if you want to see maybe the upgrades I make, you can search my profile on POB. Or you can come watch me live on Twitch below, watch the build live, and obviously I have like a link to my like a POE account and stuff so you can see it, and I also have the extension on the app on Twitch so you can see all my gear while I'm playing it, and also come follow me anyway because you know I live stream, so if you want to see some quality content then do that. Apart from that, if you're still here, thanks for watching. If I have overlooked anything or explained something too quickly or not very well, or you're still confused about something, leave a comment down below or catch me in a live stream and ask me some questions there. It'll be a lot easier in a live stream to answer your questions. But yeah, I'll try to answer them all, no matter where you come from, and I will see you in the next video or see you in the next stream. Stay frosty, wear a mask, stay safe, and 2020 sucks, right? Bye.